Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. I'll tell you what, praise Jesus, lots of good things happening, without a doubt. And this is going to be a pretty positive episode, I at least hope. So much to get to, and I have to start with this. The very next day, Monday morning, regarding my dog, things have dramatically improved, without a doubt. And I have to thank everybody for the overwhelming support and prayers, without a doubt, again, and everybody reaching out and saying that they wish the best and they're praying for her and everything else. She's doing fine, it seems. And I have to tell you, I'm overwhelmed myself. Again, I'm going to get a better idea regarding what's going on or what apparently has happened. But I have a chiropractic appointment for her set up, which is going to be interesting. In fact, the first time that I heard of chiropractors for dogs was actually when I first got her. And when I first got her, I took her to a holistic vet who, again, was anti-shot, although they were available if I wanted, but she was openly anti-shot, which I thoroughly enjoyed. She was big on, healthy diets and supplementing when necessary and 1,000 other things. But she openly mentioned chiropractic work for dogs, in particular young dogs, and even in particular bigger dogs as well, even puppies. Because, of course, the birthing process does a number on their spine, and a number of other abnormalities, so to speak, can pop up as a result of maybe not getting them adjusted. But either way, I have to tell you, her behavior has done a total 180 again, in the positive. So, I don't know what's going on. I took the pain medicine that was prescribed to her, and I'm weaning her off of it, even though they wanted me to give her a rather high dosage twice a day with food, of course. And I've basically just cut that in half. So I take a pill, I cut it in half, I give her half in the morning, I give her half in the evening, and again, she's moving around like there's no problem. So before I get into some other things regarding her, I have to mention this because I watched Jesse James's show the other night, the Dangerous Info podcast, and I have to tell you, I highly recommend not only his show, but this particular episode. He and Outcast were talking with a Vicky Joy Anderson, and this woman is very knowledgeable on spiritual battles and things of that nature. And Josiah Richwine even reached out to me, and he's very knowledgeable on all of this as well, and things of this nature too. And earlier in the day, before I knew that Jesse was going to be talking to this woman, we had a back and forth, Josiah and I did, and we were talking about this kind of stuff. The fact that the devil, and you've heard me mention this on the show before, so it's not new, and I'm sure you're well versed in this also, is that the devil goes after people, but more specifically, he'll go after the individuals that said person loves and cares about. And then he will, again, person, animal, whomever, and then will attempt to control them or hurt them as a way of hurting the individual that the devil knows that he can't control. So I just want to mention this because I'm not doubting that in the slightest. It was very odd with my dog because the morning of, when things started to turn bad around midday, everything was fine with her. There was no whimpering, there was nothing. Her routine was the exact same. Again, I come in here, I start to record my show, but before I record, she's always lying next to me and lying behind my chair. I'm reading, I'm doing research, I'm typing. And I started to get into some local school district documents that are available on their website, and I was reading through their policies and procedures, and of course, as you would expect, I'm catching everything that they're not doing, and the endless hypocrisy in all of this, and the wormhole and the rabbit hole is getting deeper and deeper and deeper. As all of that is happening, she finally gets up and she moves outside, and she's lying in the room outside of me. And And again, she's just sitting down and it's no problem. And then I walk past her again and I quickly pet her and walk past her in order to go in another room. And that's when, of course, she always follows me because she's on my hip all the time, practically, which is great. And I love it. But that's when she whimpered for the first time. And that's when I turned around and I looked at her and I went, she doesn't normally do that. And then it was after that for the rest of the day when everything just started to go downhill. The behavior part of it too, which was very odd for me and certainly odd for her, was she was looking at me like she didn't know me. And that was unsettling. Again, she wasn't coming around me, which is also not her behavior in the slightest. But she was looking at me even from a distance, like, who the hell are you? What is this? What is going on? And then she would again walk away. It was raining that entire day outside, so she wasn't running around at all because, of course, she couldn't run. She was just slowly walking and clearly walking with her tail between her legs, just looking strange. So I'm not sure. I mean, I don't know what I'm implying here other than I don't doubt that there are other forces at play potentially with what was going on. And I have no doubt that, the pain meds worked and the Cosequin is working, but it was just beyond bizarre. And I'll just kind of leave it at that. But again, after dosing her with the normal dosage on Sunday, Monday morning rolls around and the behavior is back to normal. And everything is back to normal. Again, imagine a 107-pound dog trying to jump in your lap. And she doesn't jump. But she's, again, trying to crawl into my lap. That's cool stuff. So the prayers worked, is my point. And I am grateful for it and indebted to you. So thank you. Again, I'll continue to watch her and pay attention, and I'm not going to stop with particular supplements, of course. But I have to tell you this too, and this was interesting because I think this is information that would be great for everybody. Again, a lot of dog owners were emailing me and texting and sending messages and a number of other things. And I've noticed, of course, that always happens online when somebody says something about their dog, they immediately are bombarded with with very helpful advice and endless stories. And again, as much as I may have been expecting that, I really, that wasn't the reason why I was bringing her up. I was really bringing her up because I really didn't want to record the show that day. My priorities were elsewhere, as you might imagine. But either way, there's a couple of things here that I want to bring up because, again, I think that it might be valuable to a number of individuals. First of all, Jesse James reached out to me, and I hope I pronounced this correctly, but he sent me a particular supplement that he's used with his pets before and seen a complete turnaround, certainly when it comes to joint health and muscle health and a number of other things. And it's both apparently for humans and for animals, but it's called Arnica Montana, Arnica, and then Montana, like the state. It appears to be, again, these small white tablets that, based on a particular dosage, which of course you would have to look up on your own, but you drop it into their water and then they drink the water, and then that's one of the ways that they apparently consume this. So that's pretty cool. Of course, I don't want to overwhelm her and give her toxicity of any kind, just basically piling everything on top of her all at once. In fact, I accidentally did that on Sunday with the Cosequin. I ended up giving her 3 immediately instead of sort of stretching them out throughout the course of the day. And she passed right out. So that's not good. But again, I'm sure the pain meds had something to do with that too. But either way, I've learned my lesson on that. Now, of course, I just stretch them out. Another former guest on the show, friend of mine, she sent me this website called petclub247.com. This is a cool website also. So I've certainly bookmarked this one. Again, it's got all kinds of chewy things for dogs and particular treats and natural treats and things like that. Among many other things, they've got stuff for dogs, cats, horses, other animals, humans, you name it. So petclub247.com, also very cool. Again, another guest on the show and friend of the show, friend of mine, they sent me this. This is also very interesting. They said the following here in a text message: "Sorry about May, I understand the pain." They said, "My dog Faye is 11 and she's struggling with hip and knee problems. She's a lab mix and weighs about 95 pounds. I give her turmeric with curcumin capsules every day with breakfast, 900 milligrams, from the vitamin shop, not that grocery store garbage. And they said for pain, I recommend Rimadyl, if I'm saying that right, Rimadyl. It says 100 milligram chewables. It says you can break those in half, and dogs like the taste of them. They said again that they give it to their dog as a treat, and they've also been given or have given Carprofen. I'm saying that right, Carprofen, Carprofen. In pill form too, they said, but the Rimadyl brand works better. So there you go. Another little strategy for everybody. Again, I'm just adding it to the list without a doubt. So again, I just wanted to say thank you. She was bouncing around outside yesterday, again, like there was no problem. I got on the lawnmower, was cutting the grass, and she's barking at the mower like always, bouncing around, and then she gets tired of doing that, and she goes off and does something else. So yeah, I mean, we're not playing fetch, and I'm trying to keep her on all fours instead of, rolling over and stumbling after a frisbee, but all is well so far. But yeah, dog chiropractor. I'm headed there on Wednesday, and I'll probably bring you a little update on that. Who knew? So it'll be interesting. But this was actually kind of a cool conversation I had with her over the phone, the particular animal chiropractor. She does horses and all kinds of animals. I explained to her the ACL tear, and she said, is your dog putting all of its weight on its leg, or is it limping around without its leg on the ground? And I said, no, it's putting weight on the leg. And they said, well, if it was a full tear, there's no way that would be the case. They would have it completely off of the ground all of the time and limping around on three legs. So it's possible that it's a slight tear, partial tear, thing of that nature. And I said, well, that's good. And they said, there's ways around that too, and therapeutic ways to make that a little bit better, apparently. Hopefully, anyway. And then, of course, again, like I said earlier, the business of bigger dogs getting chiropractic adjustments is a good thing. And again, I don't think she's milking me for money. I've heard that before from a number of different individuals. Certainly, if you get on YouTube and you look up dog chiropractors, the dogs look really relieved when it's all said and done. And I've seen dogs, again, on YouTube who go to these chiropractors and they can't really move hardly at all. And then the chiropractor gets done with them, and these dogs are bouncing around again like they're a brand new dog. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, we'll give it a try. I'll bring you an update on that if you're curious. And there you go. Again, just wanted to say thank you for the prayers and thank you for the well wishes. I greatly appreciate it. It was a tough day. Tough day and a half. No doubt about it. Okay. Geopolitical stuff. And there's a lot of good news. There is no doubt about that either. Here we go. First of all, it was initially said that Netanyahu was going to meet with Trump and there would be a press conference, and then they said that there was not going to be a press conference, or someone did anyway on the old interwebs, and then they ended up having one. The press conference that they had in the Oval Office was an interesting one, to say the least. Netanyahu said next to nothing. He talked about wanting fair trade and free trade and working back and forth. And then that was the end of it. The imagery, however, as I've said before in the Oval Office, is astounding, and the one glaring thing that stuck out to me was the fact that there was a passenger airplane on the coffee table facing the cameras right in between the two couches and between Netanyahu and Trump. Again, I have to bring this up. First of all, I fully understand that it is allegedly, as people are saying on the internet in response to that, they're saying that it was a model of what is going to be the new Air Force One. And that Trump, of course, has always talked about redoing Air Force One and making it look different and changing the paint job and the whole thing. That's what some people, again, on the internet were saying, and that's 100% fine. That doesn't bother me. If you go back and you think about what the main criticism, and it really was the number one criticism of the original Air Force One, the one that exists now. The original criticism is that the paint job on it looks like the Israeli flag. It's the same colors as the Israeli flag. Generally speaking, anyway. I mean, it's a light blue, white, what have you. but that's always been sort of one of the visual criticisms of Air Force One. And of course, Donald Trump, even in his first term, said that he wanted to redo Air Force One and make it look different. Either way, the imagery alone again regarding 9/11 was right in front of everybody's face. I mean, there you are again, showing an airplane with Netanyahu and Trump, and at no point in the press conference does anybody make mention of the plane. It's just there. No one goes, "Hey, Mr. President, what's with the plane?" They didn't do it. No one asked. And it's the questions that people again don't ask that I find to be astounding. Let me refresh some people's memory on this too, because this was interesting also. Again, didn't receive any comments. In November of 2018, Donald Trump was holding a cabinet meeting where they're again sitting around that giant cabinet table, conference table in the cabinet room, so to speak. And he unrolled, or it was already there in the middle of the table right in front of him, a giant poster of him, and it said, "Sanctions are coming November 4th." And it was, of course, in reference to Iran or Iranian sanctions allegedly going to be placed at that particular time. There were no comments from the media about it. They didn't complain about it. Well, they did complain about it because they were like, well, it's copyright infringement from Game of Thrones and all this other stuff, which was ridiculous. But they didn't comment specifically on it or how odd it was or whatever. And then in January of 2019, he did the exact same thing again. And again, no one asked why. It was just there. It was just an image thing that was just there. No one in the media asked why. They, in fact, ended up just complaining based on copyright infringement, so they thought. They were like, well, this could, infringe on copyright because it's Game of Thrones imagery or alleged words that are similar to Game of Thrones and whatever else. I mean, it was a no-nonsense argument, but no one's looking into the actual imagery and what it actually means and what the point is. Again, it could be nothing. And that's highly possible, I suppose. I just find it interesting that there hasn't been an airplane there in the past. And that whatever image or object is on that table does change from time to time. Because again, they're not meeting in the cabinet room, they're meeting in the Oval Office. And I think, again, the imagery does matter here. And learning these communications is important. Again, it ties back directly to Q drops. That learning how these individuals communicate matters. Again, I think it's pretty clear Trump knew who was behind 9/11. He's the president of the United States. Why would he not know? He was a New York builder. He knows that aluminum airplanes don't go through steel because there were no planes on 9/11. He knows this. He knows what the media story was, and he knows that Netanyahu was behind it, and that Netanyahu has been pushing for war with Iran since the beginning of time. He was pushing for war with Iran back before and just after, 9/11, on a constant basis. That we need to go after Iraq, Iran, Syria. We need to take over all these countries, Netanyahu would always say. Not his real name, but, that's what he goes by. That's a legit thing. But to assume that Donald Trump doesn't know, or to make any comment or scream or shout that Donald Trump doesn't know what's really going on and that Netanyahu is the bad guy, I'm telling you, I think these people are foolish. He knows he's the bad guy. Let me give you another example. There were actually two that occurred just the other day when they were meeting. He again walked behind Netanyahu, pulls out the chair, has him sit in the chair, and then pushes it in, and then Netanyahu signs basically like a guest book. Again, as if to say, I've been here and here's my autograph and whatever else. If you look at that video, which again is on my Gab page, and I think I put it on my X account also, but I'll certainly put it in the war video. Look at the look on Donald Trump's face when he pulls out the chair and Netanyahu sits in it. It's a look of complete disgust. And it's not because Trump is owned by these people. It's because he hates Netanyahu. With every bone in his body, he knows he is evil as evil gets. They're not friends. Make no mistake about it, they do not like each other. Donald Trump is the good guy in that relationship. There is no doubt about that. but the look on his face gives it all away. And speaking of looks on their faces, Netanyahu also, in the Oval Office, when Donald Trump started talking about making a deal with Iran, and that he's going to have direct talks with Iran, and that we would like to make a deal because the other option is not a good option, Donald Trump said. And he said, I don't want anything to do with that option. I'm not interested in that option. That option's not good for the area. It's not good for anybody. As he was talking about all of that, while Netanyahu was sitting there, the look on Netanyahu's face was priceless. He's looking around nervously like, why in the hell is he saying all this? I don't agree with all of this. I'm just going to keep a general smile on my face or a smirk on my face, but I don't agree with any of this. It was painfully obvious that he didn't like what Donald Trump was saying because we know what Netanyahu wants. He wants a Middle East war. He wants Israel to take more land that doesn't belong to them. That's what he wants, and Trump knows that. Again, for me personally, I think it's rather obvious, in particular if you're well-versed or well-aware or tuned into nonverbal communication. And you know the look on someone's face when they don't like when someone else is either talking or, again, what said person is actually saying. You can just look at their face and you can know that it's a look of disgust. So again, I don't think that Donald Trump is being threatened. I think we are consistently watching the art of war and the art of the deal. And toward the end here, in the jab section of the episode, I have a piece of audio from John Rich, the country music singer, that I want to play for you because he's describing a particular meeting that he had with Donald Trump. And there were some other politicians, I believe, at the table as well, which, again, you'll hear him mention, like Lindsey Graham and Marsha Blackburn and probably a few others. And the subject of vaccines came up. And Donald Trump asked John Rich about what he thought about him and why people were booing him at his rallies. I'll play that audio for you in a little bit, but I'm telling you, it's the art of the deal. And it's the art of war. You have to expose individuals. You say particular things to elicit a response. And then, of course, as we know, some of the best responses to the foolish is complete silence, because if you then say nothing, then you can hear everybody again try to defend their position, or try to bring up things, or they might even say things again that they might not normally say. So they end up exposing way more about themselves than maybe what they originally had planned. Again, the whole tariff talk, for example, and all of these tariff conversations, which, by the way, Dr. Robin McCutcheon is going to be on the show on Friday. We're going to go down the tariff rabbit hole and a number of other rabbit holes, but certainly the tariff rabbit hole, because she specifically was on Dr. Dave Janda's radio show this past Sunday, and they were at each other. I mean, they went after each other pretty darn good, and Robin was on point regarding the tariffs, and Dave Janda was having none of it. Well, I guess we get to agree to disagree. And I thought, wait a minute, wait a second. When someone says, we agree to disagree, and they're saying that to someone, again, who is a knowledgeable guest on their own show, you have to be more specific than that. What specifically do you disagree with? And then again, of course, what makes anybody believe that Donald Trump doesn't know what he's doing? Again, specifically regarding tariffs. And their conversation, again, like I said, was on Sunday afternoon. Well, what happened on Monday? What happened on Tuesday? The stock market's doing just fine, and all the deals are now getting made regarding tariffs. Some are threatening again to double down. Donald Trump's threatening to double down again himself, and other countries are calling and saying, hey, we want none of this. We don't want tariffs. Let's just do free trade straight across the board. Let's just get rid of it altogether. I mean, again, there's more going on here than I think what meets the eye, which is a fantastic thing. But I have two particular posts that I want to read. This first one, again, was from Ultra Pepe Lives Matter over on Telegram. And they have a point here, and it's not necessarily tariff-related, it's just kind of a general statement. And they said the following, quote, one thing I've learned over the course of all of these years is that it doesn't matter what kind of great things are happening, people will find a way to complain and whine about absolutely anything. When people tell me about Exodus, and how the Israelites constantly complained, they often say there is no way that would be them. Yet, every single day, I see people complaining while America is being saved, because things don't go exactly the way they want in every single moment. It's honestly exhausting to witness. I have no idea how people constantly look at only the negatives. People told me there was no way Trump would get elected again. Then he did. They told us there was no hope. Yet, here we are. Why are people dooming so much lately? I'm trying to wrap my mind around it. I refuse to cave into the negativity, unquote. Again, when the blackpilling becomes its own wavelength of thought and its own narrative, and it actually then becomes its own foundation, albeit, of course, built on quicksand, it just doesn't take in evidence. It refuses to take in evidence. Again, I heard Stu Peters the other day on a clip on X. I don't watch his show anymore. I don't. You can't listen to him anymore. I mean, I'm not saying you can listen to whoever you'd like, but me personally, I can't because he's not taking in evidence. He's not thinking. He's just screaming at the top of his lungs, and he was yelling louder than I've ever heard. Again, screaming at Donald Trump, screaming at the top of his lungs at all of the people who don't believe what he's saying. It's completely irrational. But that's not thinking. That's just emotion. That's over-emotion. And again, when that becomes its own platform and its own wavelength of thought, well, there is no thinking beyond that then. That person just gets stuck in that wavelength of thought. And the Exodus reference is perfect. Yeah, we can't go there. We can't do this. We can't do that. I'm not going to cross that sea. We can't do this. We can't do all that whining. That's so unproductive. Because again, like I said a million times here already, it just doesn't require any thinking. Anybody can complain. But we just have to take in evidence because again, there's more going on here. So let me read this post. This is from greatawakening.win, and here's what it said. It said the setup. This specifically has to do with tariffs and China and the United States. It says the setup. A secret pact with China. In the shadows of global power, Donald Trump and Chinese leadership have forged a secret alliance. The 34% tariffs China imposed on the U.S. aren't retaliation. They're a staged act in a geopolitical drama. Now, this is interesting, and it's evidence. You have to keep something in mind, too. As bad as China is with a number of different things that they do, one of the things that they hate and do not like are the Jewish bankers. They don't like them, and they would like to remove them as much as possible. Again, China didn't used to be a communist country. It was Jews who went over there and taught them how to be communists, because Jews created communism. So right now, the vast majority of communism, as it turns out, at least the Jewish form of communism, actually exists in Europe. And of course, there are certain elements, of course, that exist in the United States. But the vast majority of it is in Europe. That's essentially what the EU is. But either way, again, a little side note also before I get into this China post, Netanyahu himself, again, was calling for open trade, open this, open that. Of course, they dropped their tariffs on the United States. It was at 35 some odd percent, and then they said, well, we don't want any. And then Donald Trump allegedly came back with a 17%, interesting number, 17% tariff on them. I believe it was 33 is what Israel had on us. Again, interesting number. But again, I just read a post where it openly said that Trump is going to keep the tariffs in place for Israel no matter what because, well, we already pay them billions every single year. So they can afford it kind of thing. It's basically like us paying ourselves, essentially. I mean, it's kind of like money laundering, I suppose, but it's confusing. Either way, I think all of this tariff stuff is 100% fantastic. This is the plan. This is the idea. So again, this China post goes on and it says the following here. And it's a little lengthy. There's a few paragraphs. It says again, the setup, a secret pact with China. Quote, in the shadows of global power, Donald Trump and Chinese leadership have forged a secret alliance. The 34% tariffs China imposed on the U.S. aren't retaliation. They're a staged act in a geopolitical drama. Trump and China are partners, targeting the real enemy, the European UK financial elites, known as the deep state globalists, and that's in quotes, so we know who they're talking about. These elites control institutions like the Banks of England or the Bank of England and the European Central Bank, manipulating global markets to siphon wealth from the U.S. through trade agreements and financial schemes, keeping America economically subservient while they hoard riches offshore. Trump, aware of this since his first term via classified briefings, knew a direct attack on these elites would fail. They're too entrenched, sealed by political puppets in London and Brussels. So he devised a plan, used China as a proxy to create chaos in global markets, forcing the deep state to reveal their weakness in a high-stakes economic game. The chess game. Tariffs as a market trap. It says, quote, "The 34% tariffs from China paired with Trump's threat of 50% tariffs are designed to disrupt the global economy. Trump knows the European UK elites have billions invested in US and Chinese markets. By staging this tariff escalation, he forces them to react, moving money, adjusting portfolios, and exposing their strategies. It's a chess game, with Trump 3 moves ahead." It says step 1, create panic. The tariff threats spark market volatility. US-China trade stocks, like tech and manufacturing, plummet. The elites, fearing losses, shift assets to safe havens, quote unquote, gold, cryptocurrencies, or markets they control. Step 2, track the moves. Trump, with U.S. intelligence loyalists, monitors every financial move, logging transactions and offshore transfers. The elites think they're outsmarting the chaos, but they're walking into a trap. If memory serves, I think I said that in the last episode, that in moments like this, with all of the money moving around, this is where you catch people moving money to places where it shouldn't go, which means then you have that location, and you have the people doing the moving. So what are they moving the money to? Where are they moving it from? And what for? It goes on, it says step 3, strike when vulnerable. Once the elites overcommit, Trump and China resolve, quote-unquote, the trade war on April 9th of 2025. With a surprise deal, markets rebound, but the elites, having bet against the market, face massive losses. Trump's allies in the U.S. and China buy up devalued assets, companies, real estate, and more at a fraction of their worth. It then says the end game, dismantling the deep state. With the elites weakened, Trump dismantles their power. The other countries, quote-unquote, he mentions, Russia, India, Saudi Arabia, share grudges against the Western financial system. Trump forges new trade alliances, bypassing the European UK-centric order. The deep state loses control over the IMF and World Bank, which Trump reforms into America First systems, rewriting global finance rules. It then says the secret alliance with China, a double bluff. The twist: China isn't the enemy, it's Trump's partner. They've allied to take down the European UK deep state. China gains new markets and a weaker Western system, while Trump breaks globalist control, fulfilling his Make America Great Again vision. The tariff war is a distraction hiding the real plan. It then says why the deep state falls for it. The European UK elites underestimate Trump, seeing him as impulsive, not strategic. They believe the tariff war was real, or is real, reacting predictably and exposing their vulnerabilities. Trump's rhetoric about China abuses, quote-unquote, is theater, keeping the public and media distracted while the real game unfolds. It then wraps up and says the wildest twist, a new world order. With the deep state's empire in ruins, Trump and China reshape global trade, dominating as partners. The European UK elites are sidelined, their influence shattered. Trump's negotiations with other countries, quote-unquote, form a new economic bloc, excluding London and Brussels. The deep state scrambles to survive, while Trump cements his legacy as the man who toppled the world's invisible rulers under the guise of a trade war, unquote. Now, see, this right here is exactly where a person would say that's all science fiction. All of that's a fairy tale. None of that's true. You don't know that, Sean, XYZ. I don't know who made the post, but it makes sense. Because America, China, and Russia are the world's superpowers. We are the consumers. They have lots of people in their countries also, of course, China having the most. Everybody knows that aspect of it. But the one part that the three powers don't like are the Jewish banking system. That's the common enemy. Guess who else doesn't like the Jewish banking system? Saudi Arabia and the Middle East. Point being, everybody in the world really knows who the bad guy is. Everybody knows. It's done nothing but foment war, chaos, innocent killing, you name it. And then, of course, debt. And which, as everybody knows, is its own form of slavery. And high interest rates. And all of this is designed to destroy all of that and bring all of that down to nothing. To where tariffs don't have to exist. Individuals can live off of their own land as their own country. And yeah, if they want free trade, great. You give us a particular product, we'll give you a product of equal value. Back and forth all of the time. This is a very good thing. But again, people have to consider that the media is the enemy also. Because they're always the ones, again, trying to brainwash the public because they have direct orders to do so. That is quite literally their job. So this is not a particular fight, again, that has to take place out in the open, so to speak, on the stage with everybody in the public knowing exactly what's going on. There are people who are in the know, and then there are people, of course, who are completely brainwashed and have no clue as to what's going on. Hence all of the rallies over the weekend, all of the hands-off rallies. There was apparently even a small group of individuals, or I don't know how many people, but a group of individuals in the town where I live, same thing. And who was made up? Again, this is a university town, and apparently the people that were in this group were not university students. It was not youth. It was just a bunch of gross and old men and women, and that was it. I mean, and they're all holding up these stupid signs about things they know nothing about. It's sad if you think about it. I mean, I pity these people. But again, they have no problem screaming at the top of their lungs in any protest, and the media is the same way, about Donald Trump is making the rich richer and he only cares about corporations and 1,000 other things. He knows that we, the people, run this country. So why not make us rich in the process? Why not bring the money and the power back to the people by taking it away from the stock market, which is taking it away from the rich people? So again, on one hand, all these leftists say, tax the rich, like Ocasio-Cortez and that stupid dress she was wearing years ago that said tax the rich. Well, that's what's happening right now. So does she not like it? Because why? Donald Trump's the one doing it? And the panic is so real that Donald Trump is winning Supreme Court cases here. When it comes to the business again of that Judge Nosberg, I'll call him Nosberg just for fun, him specifically saying that Donald Trump can't deport illegals. Well, it was just ruled by the Supreme Court, yes, he can, because it's under wartime measures. Wartime measures. Because he's a quote-unquote wartime president. Because again, those executive orders are still in place. We are still theoretically at war. So this is a huge victory. This is a big win. Meanwhile, of course, as all of that is going on, Democrats, on the exact same day that Trump was meeting with Netanyahu in the Oval Office with all of the comms that were taking place there, Adam Schiff and a bunch of other nitwits like Jamie Raskin and Dick Durbin were all getting together, and they were creating a Democrats on Trump agenda and rule of law. This little committee basically saying we have to keep the checks and balances in place, and we want Republicans to join us, but some of them are saying no, and the majority of them are saying no, because of course it would be political suicide for them if they did so, but this should show people again that the deep state is not only real, but they have no problem telling people that they are desperate, and that they have a great deal to hide. Again, you give a fool an inch, they'll take a mile and hang themselves with it the entire time. So here's Adam Schiff describing this in just a couple of minutes here in 3, 2, 1.
Extraordinary step of convening this unprecedented hearing. We brought together both chambers of Congress, the Senate and the House, to conduct real oversight and to serve as a check and balance, to hold those who misuse power to account and to carry out our constitutional duty. Convening this hearing was not our first choice. We have tried to get our Republican colleagues to hold hearings, to do meaningful oversight, to assert Congress's authority as an independent branch of government. But to our great disappointment, our Republican colleagues have abdicated that important responsibility. They have stood by as the president has run roughshod over the legislative branch and turned Congress into little more than a rubber stamp. So today we'll hold the first of what we hope will be more bicameral oversight hearings. We will do the investigative work that our colleagues across the aisle refuse to do. We will expose the illegality, abuse, and corruption of this administration and within the Department of Justice. We will have brave witnesses speak to what's actually happening behind closed doors, how the Trump administration continues to try to intimidate them from speaking out, and why it matters to Americans across the country. The Trump administration is following a well-worn playbook. History serves as a guide and as a warning. In the 1930s, a Jewish lawyer in Berlin tracked in meticulous detail how Germany gradually became what he called a dual state. First, to keep the country running, the ordinary legal system remained in place for most people. And yet, step by step, a parallel system of governance and law emerged, what one scholar called a lawless zone. A parallel system carry out the will of the leader and to go after his enemies, real or perceived, to punish, to reward, to co-opt, to intimidate, silence, or take over institutions that make a society free and vibrant. The courts, the lawyers, the universities, the press, even businesses. And
they're so desperate that they're not learning from their past mistakes at all. It's amazing to me. I mean, I love this. I love it. This is the January 6th committee all over again. That blew up in their faces and they didn't learn. So they're doing it again. Because they're so stupid that they actually believe that if they just keep talking, that somehow everybody will just blindly believe them. Yet everybody, for the most part, is sitting back, certainly us, the knowledgeable, you, me, others, we're all sitting back and we're watching this and we're going, why are you talking? Why are you doing this? Stop talking. You're making yourself look like you have a ton to hide. And they just keep going. It's a serious human flaw that these individuals just don't shut up. But I love it. Adam Schiff will hang in our lifetime for treason and sedition. He engaged in it. Donald Trump knows this. The military knows this. The evidence is overwhelming, not to mention what he did in a previous life. All of that's known too. So he's quite literally fighting for his life here, and he thinks he can talk his way out of it. It's not going to happen. Winning, ladies and gentlemen, we're winning. This is a beautiful thing. Let me give you one last example. This was bouncing around on X also. Absolutely hilarious. Again, you give these people an inch, they'll take a mile and hang themselves with it. The head of the European Union, this demonic woman, Ursula von der Leyen, if that's her real name, she openly says here in some speech that she's giving that Europe has the values of the Talmud. Can't make this up. Give her a listen in 3, 2, 1.
Europe is the values of the Talmud, the Jewish sense of personal responsibility, of justice, and of solidarity.
What? What? What the hell was that? Who believes that? I mean, she's Talmudic, if that's a word and I can say it that way. There's no doubt about that. She's disgusting. But she just told you who they are. She just told you exactly why the European Union exists. They're not interested in fairness. They're interested in child trafficking, murder, money laundering, manipulation, lying, deceiving, all of it. They have no problem looking people right in the face and telling you exactly who they are. Works for me. It's just waking more people up. Just keep doing it. Keep doing it. These people won't win. They will not win. Their game is going to come to an end eventually because they can't keep playing it like this all of the time without more and more people waking up. And people are waking up and getting angry at them. It's not going to work out for them either. Okay, now speaking a little bit of brainwashing, I'll slide this in very quickly. You may recall a past guest on the show. Paula is her name, from Canada. Excellent human being, former truck driver. And the whole Canadian truck driving fiasco that took place, of course, with the mandated shot taking and mask wearing, she said no, go pound sand. Not going to do it, not going to take it. Great episodes with her on all the time. She sent me a nice email the other day. I just wanted to give it a quick read here because, again, it taps in a little bit to the Canadian mind, and it certainly isn't all Canadians. Again, there are a lot of patriots out there, I fully understand, and they know the difference between loving their country, loving their land, and politicians. They're not the same. They are completely different. And unfortunately, again, Canada has been under the thumb of the Crown of England since the beginning. Should have never been that way, but that's the way that it's been. So here's what she said. She said, "Hi, Sean, just wanted to let you know that I'm praying for your sweet girl, May. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. I will send positive thoughts your way." She said, "As for the issue of tariffs, the quote, 'I stand with Ukraine,' unquote, signs have been replaced with 'Canada is not for sale,' quote unquote signs. It is frustrating, once again, to see how malleable people's thoughts are and perceptions are. When my coworkers angrily blame Trump, I ask what is wrong with the leader looking out for his own people. They can't argue that point. When they say that they are proud to be Canadian, I ask them why. We have had leaders that are embarrassing. They can't argue that point. When they say, quote, 'Canada is not for sale,' I say that's correct, quote unquote. We sold out to the Chinese years ago. The Trump derangement syndrome is alive and well in Canada, she said. They can't argue with me, but it is still Trump's fault, and that's final, LOL. Yeah. Yep, they just need somebody to blame. People don't want to look inward. She went on and she said, "I wish we had a leader ready to stand for this country instead of the globalist that they have planted instead. I stand with all of the people in the world who still have the ability to think for themselves," unquote. Yes, I completely agree, and thank you, Paula, for the email. Again, this continues to be a huge issue. People not understanding the difference between the land that they walk on, where they are a natural-born citizen, hopefully, and then, of course, politicians and government. A person can love their country without loving government. If a person says, "I love government," well, then you love mind control. You love controlled mind control and voted on mind control. People just have to get past that eventually. Again, in Q Post, it said something like, whatever it was, 2 to 4, 2 to 6% of the individuals that walk the earth just will never wake up. They just won't. It won't matter how much truth is out there. It won't matter how many good things are happening. They're too far gone. They are beyond saving. I believe this. There's no way that everybody can wake up. I mean, it just can't happen. As I've said before, and as, again, you're well aware, if Christ came out of the clouds and said, "My name is Jesus, I've come back, I'm here to clean house and make new rules, and the rules that have always existed that I told people about are still in place, but some of you just aren't following along," there would be people who would hold up a sign that said "bigot." They just would. They would get on Facebook and organize a rally against it. It's nuts. So yeah, some people just can't be saved. In fact, let me slide into education now, because I have a piece of audio here that I want to play, and this is Megyn Kelly, who you know I'm not a fan of. Again, she's a sensationalist and a gossip queen. But at the exact same time, she, again, talking about this particular story, which has to do with the so-called Nashville school shooter, remember all of that nonsense? And again, how there was no shooting. and how every single time that this story gets brought up and stories like it, it just gets recycled into the mainstream wavelength of thought among individuals who, again, don't think for themselves. They just listen to what other people tell them all the time. And they don't look at evidence, of course, and then they just make snap emotional decisions. That when this happens, it's revisiting ritualized trauma. That's the point. These stories make their way back into the mainstream again. Again, if you want to consider Megyn Kelly mainstream, which I guess you could. She never really left Fox News theoretically, but either way, this kind of behavior is done on purpose, again, to continuously brainwash people. And this is a non-story. This is so irrelevant, it shouldn't even be brought up. But I'm just going to play this here because, again, she's giving credit to the FBI and Kash Patel, and Kash Patel's FBI, that this information has been released, certainly allegedly to her, thousands of pages on the transgender individual who killed all those people, and yet no one's seen a single drop of blood or a single body anywhere, other than theirs, allegedly. But either way, give her a listen here in 3, 2, 1.
We received an exclusive on the Nashville shooters manifesto from the FBI. We exclusively had permission to report on it, though not to post the documents. And we spent the weekend reviewing the over 1,000 of them. What we concluded, and it's outlined in Morning Update, which is on YouTube and on our podcast feed, is that we were misled by Nashville authorities last week who said, there's not one document called the manifesto, so we're just going to tell you, based on our reading of these 1,000+ documents, what the motives here were. And guess what didn't make the dance? The shooter's trans ideology. At all. At all. So we read through the documents, and again, we've been misled. This woman was obsessed with trying to trans herself, wanting to trans herself, trans ideology. I mean, it was like reading a leftist playbook on race, gender, and hatred for America. And now it's becoming really clear why this wasn't shared with us for 2 years. Well, we've seen it, and we don't have the same agenda as the people making those decisions. And thanks to Kash Patel and his transparent efforts at the FBI, we will bring you a full report.
It doesn't matter. Again, it's just completely irrelevant. It doesn't matter. There was no shooting. The whole thing was fake. It was completely fabricated. You know, I did endless episodes on that, probably at least 2 or 3, nonstop. I was recording live as it was actually happening, and I'm going, this is fake. Look at all of these anomalies. Look at all these policies being violated. Look at all of this, stoked up ritualistic trauma on every single news station. It's just the fact that they keep revisiting it should prove to people that these people can't be trusted. Megyn Kelly can't be trusted, not in the slightest. Again, no offense to John Rich. I know he lives in Nashville, good for him. But, he replied, an individual again posted below and said, can you ask Kash if he's actually in charge? And then John Rich replied to her and said, if you don't trust Kash and Dan, then you can't trust anybody. It's not about trust. It's about evidence. Again, in no way is Kash Patel saying that a shooting happened. They're honing in on the behavior of an individual. That doesn't prove that there was a shooting. So what if they wanted to change their clothes and pretend to be a boy? Who cares? Doesn't matter. It doesn't prove that they actually pulled a trigger that killed somebody. We saw them, break glass and walk around a little bit in a couple of the hallways. And then we saw body cam footage of what appeared to be the same individual allegedly being shot by police. But there were no child dead bodies anywhere. So, yeah, it's just, again, it's like Steven Crowder nonsense. It has no place because there's no evidence. Again, I find it beyond ironic that, of all people, Megyn Kelly, a former prosecutor, lawyer herself, would know, as she screams at the top of her lungs all the time about evidence, quote unquote, that you would think that she would care about evidence. Well, there's no evidence. There's no evidence to this. There's no evidence to that. She'll use the word evidence with endless other cases that she'll opine on, but not when it comes to this, because a manifesto isn't evidence. You don't need motive to actually prove that a crime has been committed. Motive has nothing to do with it. There's either a murder or there isn't. Has anybody seen a picture of one of the deceased? Adult or child? I mean, I haven't. So, what gives? Again, I went through it step by step. And again, not to revisit school shootings and fake school shootings, but the way that you can always find out that they're fake is that the policy always gets violated. The policy is always broken by every staff member. Again, what are the odds that all of the individuals in that building would all be congregating in the exact same room for some assembly? And then they're claiming again that that's why more people weren't killed, was because there were a couple of kids going to the bathroom who ended up being shot, but the principal was shot. And they don't know where that happened. And then, of course, whatever it was, a cafeteria worker, a male janitor rather, was shot, but they're all heroes because they're all dead. And yet no one has any footage of any of this. That's, again, it's not evidence. I know I'm repeating myself, but it's embarrassing. So once people start wrapping their heads around that level of deception, then they'll start to wake up. That there is no spoon. So just stop bending it. Speaking of spoon bending, holy Lord, this Carmelo Anthony guy out of, again, Frisco, Texas, and stabbing this Metcalf kid to death, Austin Metcalf, rest his soul. Again, I wasn't there, but there's no reason to believe that it didn't happen. Here's a particular post from Aesthetica, and they said the following: new information has come out about the black terrorist who murdered Austin Metcalf. Number 1. He had been previously suspended for bringing a knife to school. Shocking. Number 2, he had no business being at the track meet. He was not competing at the meet. He was skipping school. Uh-oh. Number 3, he was hiding in Metcalf's tent with a knife to avoid being caught skipping school. Or he was stealing things, of course. Says number 4, when Metcalf asked Anthony to leave his tent, Anthony murdered Metcalf because he didn't want to leave the tent and be caught skipping. This was premeditated and he should be given the death penalty, unquote. Or he just didn't want to get caught stealing. It was, that was suspected also. Either way, school negligence? I think so. Seems pretty clear that that's the case. Individual with a rap sheet, so to speak, certainly a school-related rap sheet, and then, again, essentially trespassing. Again, even if they paid for a ticket and they were there lawfully, I mean, that's fine, but suspicious behavior is suspicious behavior. And if you're going from tent to tent and you're looking for particular things to steal, or you're just hiding out in someone's tent that's not yours, that you're not affiliated with, that's strange. So there's certainly, again, another motive as to why that individual was actually there. And then, of course, you talk about the depravity of society. Opening up a GoFundMe page where the limit initially for the black individual who did the crime and the murder, Carmelo Anthony, ended up at a $75,000 cap, and then it exceeded that. So then the owners of that particular GoFundMe page raised it to $100,000 and then $150,000 because the cost just keeps going up and the donations keep pouring in for a murderer. I can't help but think again of sort of the O.J. Simpson trial. It's right up there with that. It's very tribal, the behavior that exists among some, rather than, again, being objective, looking at evidence and saying this is wrong. We should not support this. Everybody's entitled to a defense, but the individual, again, there were endless witnesses to this crime apparently, and of course, they confessed. So why the donations? What point is being proven other than there's a copious amount of stupid people that exist on planet Earth? I don't think they make up the majority of the population, but there are certainly plenty of them. Okay, with that said, one quick little last comment. Again, I'm bouncing back to Kash Patel just very quickly. Kash Patel was at the Washington Capitals hockey game where Alexander Ovechkin ended up beating Wayne Gretzky's record for most goals in a career. Again, I don't know why Kash Patel was there. He was standing next to Mrs. Gretzky in the stands. I don't know. I mean, for me, it personally seems like a bad look. That's just my opinion. Again, he's on film. It's him. There's no doubt about it. He's not wearing an FBI hat or anything, but he's wearing a suit. And, if I was the FBI director, that's not what I would be doing. I wouldn't be attending sporting events. And, I would be working. I would be doing other things of that nature. So, that's a personal preference, but either way, I think it's kind of an odd look. Anywho, jab-related things. I have a quick thread I want to read, and then I have 2 pieces of audio that I want to play. One of them is from, again, a British whistleblower, and you'll hear her describing the retaliatory measures that are being taken against individuals who, again, know what's going on over there. And at the exact same time, I will end with that John Rich conversation where he's talking about Trump and the other politicians and the shot taking. So here's the thread. This was from a couple months back, but it's a nice review again of how hospitals were incentivized throughout this entire process, the whole COVID lie, and how they were actually paid to kill people. Now, we are well versed in this, of course. You already know this information, but I'm just putting it out there again, because some of these things do bear repeating. This is from a Dr. Wojak, MD. Awesome little icon there, the old Wojak meme. Okay, it was titled, How Hospitals Took Bribes to Kill You and Blame It on COVID, a thread. Regardless of your view on COVID, and they put in parentheses, it was a hoax, by the way, the incentives, quote unquote, to kill healthy people were pure evil. Hospitals were paid to kill, and they happily took the money. Hospitals got rich by pretending to fight a fake pandemic. Over 1 million U.S. deaths were blamed on COVID, but many were actually killed by murderous NIH CDC hospital protocols, and the killers were hailed as heroes. Let's break it down. Hospitals pocketed up to $1,419 for every COVID test, which of course are also fake, funded by taxpayers, of course, like everything else on their list. Hospitals got at least $13,000 for every COVID diagnosis, also fake. But there's absolutely no way this massive financial incentive could have influenced their decision-making in any way whatsoever. It says hospitals were bribed to push COVID vaccines, quote unquote. Medicare paid $28.39 for the first shot and $16.94 for each booster. The more shots they gave, the more money they made. Hospitals made up to $3,200 per patient for administering remdesivir, a drug linked to organ failure and a 53% death rate in Ebola trials. Why would the government pay hospitals to push such a deadly drug? Of course, Anthony Fauci. It says hospitals got an extra $39,000 for putting a COVID patient, quote unquote, on a ventilator. Ventilators will kill you. But they were too profitable for hospitals to pass up. Up to 90% of the people put on ventilators died. But at least hospitals made fat sacks of cash. It says in states with the highest payouts, hospitals could rake in over $100,000 per patient by stacking bonuses for tests, admission, remdesivir, ventilators, a COVID-related death. It said, but there's no way this huge financial incentive influenced their decisions, right? Has a huge breakdown here of, again, the amount of funding per COVID case that each state received from the first $30 billion in aid regarding the CARES Act. It's hundreds of thousands of dollars per state. It says it gets worse. Emergency waivers let hospitals bypass consent, sedate, and deny safer treatments, all legally protected. Under the PrEP Act, they couldn't be sued for approved, quote-unquote, treatments. Imagine profiting from mass murder with total immunity. It goes on, it says hospitals received a 20% bonus on the entire hospital bill for COVID patients. Hospitals earned another 20% bonus for using deadly treatments like remdesivir and other covered countermeasures, quote unquote. Imagine thinking hospital workers were heroes during COVID. The true heroes were the whistleblowers who tried to expose this atrocity. The rest, complicit in mass murder. Share what happened in the other countries below. It says, for anybody doubting the claim that COVID was a hoax, here's a linked thread. It says, for anyone insisting that there was something unique about their cold flu symptoms during COVID, I suggest reading this linked thread on the nocebo effect. Unquote. Well, I have no doubt, again, that the symptoms were different because there were other forces at play here. There was electromagnetic radiation, of course, or shedding, I should say, from not just 5G towers, but also, of course, through those who actually received flu shots and injections in 2019. So that, of course, was a big problem. And that was a bit unique because some of those symptoms were different from what people would consider to be the normal flu. Now, flu doesn't exist, as we all know, but what does differ from time to time, of course, is the poison that people put into their bodies, how that reacts to them, and then, of course, how it reacts to the other individuals around them who are shed on. So that's where you were getting things like loss of taste, tinnitus, loss of smell, things of that nature. Again, typically not symptoms that somebody would, equate to, receiving a flu shot, so to speak, but they are and can be relatively common when it comes to things like, again, having a very severe cold. So I'm not saying there aren't other forces at play, and I'm also not denying a so-called nocebo effect or placebo effect, sort of, where an individual, again, convinces themselves that they have something when in fact they don't. I'm certain that that happens too. So there's that. Okay. Here's a piece of audio again from an NHS whistleblower in England. Give her a listen in 3, 2, 1.
Hi, good morning. I thought I'd come on and put up another video as the other video was deleted. I just wanted to come on and share again about my raising concerns and speaking up experience, really. So I'm Victoria. I've changed my name to the Uncensored Midwife, and I was an NHS UK midwife. I've deregistered on the 9th of April last year, which you won't be able to see online because they hide the people that come off the register. They only expose the people that have proceedings against them. So basically, I raised internal safety concerns from the 17th of October 2021, right back through student days as well, and then until I ultimately left as there was no change. I endured 3 grievances, an appeal, an employment tribunal against the hospital, which included my union, the RCM, Royal College of Midwives, dropping me and not supporting me through that, giving me the wrong advice, which sabotaged part of my claim. And I had to represent myself against an NHS barrister for 4 hours. It was horrible. It was a horrible experience. I actually withdrew my claim because the only outcome for that was monetary value, which I'm not interested in. I want meaningful change. And the judge could not sanction the hospital in any way. So I decided not to take the money and I refused to be gagged. So here I am, as loud as ever. But I wanted to let people know that when I whistle blew, the director at the hospital called me and told me that whistleblowers go missing overnight. Isn't that interesting? I'd go missing overnight for whistleblowing. What would they be covering up? What are they hiding? I've thought about this a lot. Is it just me? Or is there lots of us? Is there lots of us out there that are going through this? Well, I've clearly learned now there are many of us. So I push on, ignoring him. Although I stopped running at night, I felt a little bit on edge. I was like, it's a bit worrying. I didn't show him I was scared of him in any way. A month or so later, I'm called a baby killer online. I wasn't responsible for the death of any baby, just so you know. I've now got civil proceedings on that. But I wouldn't wish it on anybody to have to go through this for speaking up for what's right, which is the right thing for women and babies. It just doesn't really go hand in hand, does it? So I just really want to say that I think it's really important that people know what's happening here in the UK, which has been happening for a long, long time. And people are shocked when I tell them that a little midwife in Devon was told she'd go missing overnight for raising concerns about patient safety, which is in my code of conduct to do, by the way, to safeguard the public. I'm not scared. I'm not scared. I've been given this mission for a reason. I will push on. I will be loud. I will be proud. I will keep giving the evidence. I will keep sharing people's stories. Not everything I share is mine. It's because people are too frightened, and I will stand in front and give them that platform because nobody else is, not even the mainstream media, none of it. So I'm not afraid. I'm living my life the best I can. I'm rebuilding my life the best I can. And now I'm part of something that I never thought I would have been a year ago. I've had so much support from a very small group of people who are here to protect me and support me. So I just think it's really important that everybody in the world knows that the midwives in the UK are being silenced, which is killing them. It's making them ill. There is no platform. And the one midwife that came out and shared an exit interview with everybody online and 657 MPs has been told she'd go missing overnight and is a baby killer. I had people sending me messages saying, I'm going to find your house. I'm going to find where you are. What a cruel thing to do to someone who had an exemplary career. Exemplary career. Interesting. Tuning out. Take care.
Again, I bet the midwives are seeing absolutely nightmarish situations and conditions regarding, again, pregnant mothers, women who want to get pregnant, babies who are born to jabbed mothers, what all of that looks like. So yeah, certainly a very specified medical field, but a very important one because this was part of the depopulation agenda, of course. And my hat always goes off to whistleblowers all of the time. So again, good for her for turning things around. That's fantastic. Okay. In conclusion, here is this John Rich audio, and he's sitting around a table with a few other guys, at least 3 or 4 other guys, and he's describing again this conversation that he has with Donald Trump at a dinner where they were all again talking about the shots, and Donald Trump asked John Rich, why is it that people are booing me at these rallies? There's a very specific reason, I think, as to why Donald Trump asked that question, because he knows the room. He knows who's in the room. So give this a listen in 3, 2, 1.
We're sitting there, and everybody's eating their food, and President Trump is not president at this time, and he's talking to the senators. He's talking about really important stuff, and I'm just minding my own business going, I don't know how I got in this room. Well, okay. I'm sitting elbow to elbow with him. It's about an hour into dinner. I hadn't said a word, just been listening. And Trump gets through eating, and you've seen him do this move right here. Yeah. Wherever in the big boardroom he does this. Okay, that's what he does. He goes, can I ask you a question, John Rich? He never calls me John. John Rich? I look at him, I go, yes, sir. What's the question? He goes, well, you do a lot of big shows. Like, you're an entertainer? Yes, sir. You play for really big crowds? I go, I do. I play for really big crowds for a long time. He goes, well, have you seen these rallies I'm doing? Like, it's 30, 40,000 people. I said, yeah, it's unbelievable. He goes, so here's the question. Why are people booing me at my rallies when I bring up the vaccine? This is the question from the President of the United States. A guy who is very proud at that moment of the fact that he was able to stomp the gas pedal and get that thing out because he's under the impression this is going to fix the problem.
Operation Warp Speed.
That's it.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's a guy who, to his own admission, one of the biggest egos on the earth.
Yeah.
And he's very proud of this. And I respect him there is no limit.
Right.
But I'm being asked a very direct question. And so, man, I looked at him and I said, okay, I'm going to tell you the answer and you're not going to like it. He goes, okay, what's the answer? You're going to look at me like this? I said, let me start off by saying this. We, the American people, do not trust the people that you were forced to trust at the time when this was happening. Let's start there. And I said, by the people we don't trust, here's who I mean. The FDA, the CDC, the NIH, the WHO, Fauci, and all the rest of them. I said, Mr. President, we consider them to be a bunch of murderous, depopulationist psychopaths.
And his reaction was...
That's a good way to start.
His eyes are, he goes, unbelievable. Unbelievable. He's stunned. No, he is stunned that I said that. I said, now, let me tell you why they're booing you. I said, because all of them, including me, I said, I would boo you. I would boo you.
Did you really?
You did not. I would boo you.
Really?
If you brought that up, and here's why. And he's looking at me, and I'm thinking to myself, this is the last time this guy's going to invite me to anything.
Yeah.
He's never going to call me again. I'm throwing massive shade on a former president's, in his mind, one of his biggest accomplishments.
Mm-hmm.
And it dawned on me, nobody had told the man what I was telling him right now, because they all work for him. They all got something to gain from him.
Yes.
They're not going to tell him this because they're not serving him well. I don't work for him. And I think a lot of him, and I want him to understand the truth about it. So I said, here's the problem. Here's why they're booing you, Mr. President, because every human being out in that rally, either themselves or they know someone directly who has been harmed by the vaccine or has even died from it, including me. I said, I got members of my own family who were forced to take it against their will to keep their jobs. And now they've got all kinds of problems. Big problems, heart problems, lung problems. And he's looking at me, and he looks around the table and he goes, this is unbelievable. I mean, he goes, has anyone else heard this? Herschel Walker, he was running for Senate at the time. He goes, Mr. President, I mean, down in Georgia, my constituents come up at my rallies, and what John just said, man, I hear it every single day. Looks over at Marcia. Marcia's sitting there going, looks around the table, and then Lindsey Graham, who's sitting across. So you're here, or I'm here. I'm sorry, but you're Lindsey Graham.
Sorry, you're Lindsey.
Sorry.
Lindsey, everybody.
Okay, you're Lindsey Graham, and you're me. Okay. As I'm going into the part where I said, even in my own family, I have Lindsey Graham busts in with it swishing his Chardonnay around and said, Mr. President, if you listen to conspiracy theorists like John Rich, the Democrats are going to take credit for what you did, and they're going to beat you in the next election with it. So I'm looking at Trump, and he's sitting over there, and he does that, and I looked at him, and I said, do not interrupt me when I'm speaking. Do you understand me?
You what?
And he looked at me and he goes, well, I didn't mean to disrespect you. I go, yeah, but you did.
Oh.
So.
Right now you look like Wyatt Earp. It's very intimidating.
Trump is right here. You're Lindsey Graham, okay? I go, I'm holding him.
Oh, good. Yeah. You're Lindsey Graham.
I look back up as the president. I look at him one more time. I go, now let me finish what I was saying.
Oh, man.
And then I finished it. Okay. Trump ended that by saying, so I guess no more vaccine talk. I said, I think that's a good idea. I said, I think you're going to learn a lot about it. But yes, I think that's a good idea because that's the only thing that would make us ever boo you, Mr. President.
Yeah, because you're right. I mean, that's one of the things that I think a lot of people didn't agree with him on, and it was the vaccine and him being proud of it. And Jason actually has a story that's similar to that.
Well, the thing about Trump and the vaccine, Trump never mandated the vaccine.
No, exactly.
Trump said, you're all the doctors, go figure out how to make this stop.
We need to make this available.
And he trusted these people that we now all know are a bunch of depopulationist animals. We all know that now, but he never mandated it because mandating an experimental medical procedure violates the Nuremberg Code. It's a crime against humanity.
Yeah.
Which I hope we see that play out because people need to be held accountable for that in a major way. I think it will.
Yeah.
So that was the story there. So, again, he has called me since then. He does text me back from the Super Bowl. He has invited me to more. So I did not lose my friendship with him. I think if anything, based on a couple of things he's asked me over the last year or so, he probably appreciates the fact that I'll say something to him that he don't really want to hear that.
Again, God bless John Rich. He just doesn't see it multidimensionally. He wasn't involved from the start. He wasn't reading online. He wasn't connecting dots. And you can tell, again, by the way that he's framing things and the way that he's saying things. Donald Trump was engaging in the art of war and the art of the deal right there. He was looking at the people in the room and all of the people who could have told Donald Trump at the time, back in 2020, about the shot taking and this isn't a good idea and don't go in this direction and whatever else. All of those people kept their mouths closed, Republican, Democrat alike. And then, of course, per usual, Lindsey Graham exposes himself as being the weasel that he is. Donald Trump, being the businessman that he is, knows exactly who is in the room. He knows who speaks, he knows who doesn't, and he was the one who posed the question, a very seemingly naive question. Do you honestly believe that the President of the United States, and that's assuming it was around 2021, did not know what was really going on? Again, I've been over it on the show. You're well aware. You know exactly what was happening. He forced all these people out. And again, you can tell that John Rich didn't know that, and that was part of the plan here, was to force the people into the limelight like the Anthony Fauci's and Deborah Birx's of the world and everybody else and these other establishment administrators, not to mention these shot companies, which a lot of people, again, had never even heard of. All of that was on purpose. So when he says Donald Trump was listening to all these medical people around him and he was trusting these people, he clearly wasn't. He knew exactly who these people were. He had the military look into these individuals. He knew who these people were. He knew exactly what was going on, which is exactly why shots were not the first thing he told people to do or told people to take. Not to mention, you don't do what a president says. You don't inject things into your body because a president says so. That's not the reason to do it. And again, forcing people, they were forced to keep their job. Well, I know a lot of people, again, who weren't forced to do it to keep their job. They walked away from their job. A lot of people, endless people. So there's none of this forced talk either. I was forced to or else. A lot of people walked away. Trump was starting a conversation, and it worked. Because, again, John Rich knew what was going on, certainly from the shots hurting people. He knew what was happening from that standpoint. And then, of course, you could hear him talk about the depopulation agenda there as well. He again, later on understood that was the case. What John Rich might have a hard time understanding is that there were those of us out here in front of it, knowing well in advance of 2020 that there was already in place a depopulation agenda. And that there has always been. But that's what Operation Warp Speed was. It was to speed up the enemy's plans. Again, wrote a Substack about it. You're welcome to bounce over to theamericanclassroom.substack.com and check it out. And move that around to people if you're interested. But there you go. It was a purposeful conversation. It exposed a great deal of people in the room. It got a conversation started on purpose, again, seemingly innocent enough. And then very serious things come out in the process. So, yeah, Trump didn't take the shots. He probably told people he did, but he didn't. Nobody has any stone-cold proof that he took the shots other than the fact that he said that he did when asked. But he hesitated before he answered. So, yeah, still plenty going on, but that right there is the art of the deal in action. That's exactly what that is. I'm going to get a group of people together. We're going to have dinner. I'm going to lean in. I'm going to ask, again, a seemingly innocent question, and then I'm going to sit back and play dumb and act like I don't know what's going on, and then let everybody just hash it out and hammer it out among themselves. And then everybody exposes themselves and exposes their levels of knowledge, and they all expose their motivations. John Rich just told you what Lindsey Graham's only motivation was for all of that. Don't bring it up, Mr. President, because you'll lose the next election. Nope. Not true. Lindsey Graham showed his true colors, and in that conversation, exposed himself yet again. So there you go. How many conversations like that have taken place? That would be fun to find out. And again, to be a fly on the wall on conversations like that would also be very, very interesting. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, again, thank you for the well wishes for my dog. Thank you for listening to the show as always. I greatly appreciate it. Dr. Robin McCutcheon will join us on Friday. Stay tuned for that. In the meantime, continue to have a great week, hopefully, and I will catch you then. Peace. Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.